But no, this is Boston team. This has been a run, man. This has been a run. KD, Kyrie Nets, Giannis Bucks, Jimmy Butler Bam Heat, and now they have to face the Golden State Warriors. Like this is fun. This is fun.
It is fun. It should be fun. We should keep it fun. But I saw, like, even you mentioned the run, and people be like, "Boy, what a run Boston's on!" And people would be like, "Oh, they only faced KD, and then Middleton was out, and then Miami couldn't score." And it's like, don't. Why do we take so much time to discredit teams? Yeah. Like, why is that? Why is that a thing we do? Like, Boston worked to get to this point. Golden State worked to get to this point. They are here for a reason, and let's enjoy what they bring to the table. Are you ready? Are you excited for this finals?
Yes, very much so.
I know you are. You said, I can't wait to talk about the series like 72 hours ago. So let me hear what you got.
Let's talk about this series between, in terms of defensive rating, the two best defenses in basketball. This is going to be a junky series at points. One, the defenses are really good. Marcus Smart, Al Horford, Robert Williams, Grant Williams, Derek White, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, ridiculous defensive personnel. Golden State has freaking Draymond. Kevon Looney has been working his tail off all postseason long. Andrew Wiggins has been good. Klay Thompson is finding his way, but you know the pedigree that he has. Steph Curry has been amazing defensively. They're probably getting Gary Payton II at some point this series, and he was one of the best guard defenders in basketball when he was on the court. They both have a whole lot of guys. And on top of that, we saw the bad of Boston, where you have some wild passes, you have some of the ball security issues that we saw from Jaylen Brown. They will turn the ball over sometimes. Golden State, as fun as they are when they're humming and moving around and relocating and bombing threes everywhere, they also have a case of turnover-itis sometimes. And so I am excited to see how they sort out the matchups and also which offense can take care of the ball, because that's what really can open this series up. Because if either of those teams get to play in transition a bunch, like, it's not going to be a good time for the other.
It's interesting you brought that up, turnover-wise, but I feel like these are two teams that are, like, prepared to see each other right now in different ways. We talked about Boston's path, but think about Golden State's path to this. You face an elite player in Jokic, you face an elite player in Ja, and then have to deal with a team base once Ja goes down. And then you face a Dallas team that has Luka and is not afraid to matchup hunt and is not afraid to get after you defensively. That's not bad prep for facing Boston based on the run that they've had. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting to see what's going to happen, because in theory, you have a Boston defense that should present Golden State with a challenge they haven't faced yet. They're going to have to deal with activity. They're going to have to deal with size. They're going to deal with length. They have to deal with different lineups. And part of Golden State, it's not just, hey, do they not turn it over? They're going to have to deal or execute offensively in a way where they have a blend. Pick and roll, off-ball cuts, dribble penetration. The paint points have been huge for them. They have to present all of that. Can Boston take something off the table? And can Golden State find a way to execute? Can the Celtics get the Warriors into those stretches offensively where you see the little thing on the bar that says Golden State scoreless in, whatever the timer says? And then can they generate easy offense off of that? And Golden State, on the flip side, has an offense that can present Boston with a different challenge than they've seen. Now, here's the interesting point. Brooklyn had star talent, not necessarily the movement. Milwaukee had star talent, not necessarily the movement. Miami had the movement, but Boston did a good job of taking them off of that. Like, that's one of the underrated parts of that series. Mm-hmm. Boston took that off-ball movement off the plate early in that series. with their activity, with their switches, with their physicality, denying the ball. They just kind of move that to the side. Can they do that against Golden State? Because if you look back, even just mentioning the Golden State Dallas series, when Dallas was able to do that, it looked a little bit different. If you could take that off the plate against Golden State, now they have to really do something else, and it looks different. So if Boston can have that kind of momentum, if they can have that kind of activity, that's going to be intriguing.
Let's start there with Golden State and their movement. Let's start with Steph Curry. The regular season meetings, just 2 games. A lot of guys missing in both of those. Boston was an entirely different team during the December matchup. Josh Richardson played in that game. Romeo Langford played in that game. Like, it's in terms of personnel, it was just different. But from a scheme perspective.
Really? Was it? No one on Twitter told me there were different matchups while I was watching that game. I had no idea. Silly me.
That was so much better than I thought it was going to be.
Offer free content. Now, yo, you know when we play? Yeah, I know. I am aware. You misspelled your welcome.
Oh, that's beautiful. Okay. Back to Stephen Curry. Since the personnel was a little bit different, from a scheme perspective, Steve, what did you see Boston try to do against Steph Curry? And what are some things that you, from that regular season series, that you think will carry over into this final series?
I think Steph Curry is going to present a different challenge for Boston, but I also think that Boston prepared for it. It's a weird deal, so stick with me. Curry's going to put 2 on the ball and pick and roll, and that's going to force Robert Williams to react, Al Horford to react in a way they haven't had to. And they can also run sets for him off ball that's going to force Boston to react and put pressure on him. Now, off ball, it's going to be interesting. Can they get the denials? Can Marcus Smart bother that? Does that take that off the table? I'm intrigued as to that part. But Curry's different than what Boston's seen. They haven't seen that kind of shooting threat in this playoff run. And the big key for me is, can Steph Curry create drives against this Boston defense? Can he get the paint touches against this Boston defense? Because if he can, that's going to change the landscape of this series for me. If you're Boston, you know what he can do. You know it's tough, but you kind of hope you can keep him as a shooter, I guess, and contest his looks.
Mm-hmm.
But if he's able to put 2 on the wall and pick and roll, hurt you off ball, and then also drive in pick and roll or in transition, that's a lot to deal with. Mm-hmm. So they have to find a way to take something off the table. And I don't know exactly what's going to be, but I know that Dallas series looked a lot different once Steph was able to, hey, you know I can shoot, but also I'm driving. What are you going to do about it? Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what you hope the activity of Smart will do, is take that away. How that works is going to be interesting.
I'm curious. I think for Boston, the key is, which is a duh thing, this is what we've been saying about Steph Curry his entire career. Very obvious. What makes Steph great is that it's obvious you still can't do it because he's that good. They have to stay attached to him at all times. Boston was the switchiest team in basketball this year. They're going to try to flatten out some of Golden State's actions. But it can't just be a switch. They're going to have to keep a body on him. They're going to have to grab as much as they can without it being a foul to make sure Steph can't get the clean push-offs or get the clean launches when he's flying off these screens. Because all he needs is a sliver to get the shot up. And for defenses, if you see him get that sliver, Golden State's won already. Because now you're reacting. Someone else is, oh crap, I got to step up. That creates 2 to the ball. Someone's slipping. There's Draymond on a 3v2. There's Kevon Looney on a 3v2. Here's Andrew Wiggins cutting from the strong side corner now because you had to help down somewhere. And that's all the chaos you need. So Marcus Smart is going to have his work cut out for him. I think this is going to be another big Derek White series as well. And I think that's going to benefit Boston as well. Being able to, barring injury or foul trouble, being able to have 48 minutes of Marcus Smart or Derek White on the floor, I think is going to be huge for them. Because you talked about the way that they were able to take Miami's movement off the table. That's a lot of Derek White in particular. Because as Smart got back in that series and was healthier, like he took the Jimmy Butler matchup. And the screen navigation was important as well. He's ducking under and beating Jimmy at certain points and making life tough on him. But what Derek White was able to do to Max Strus for most of that series, like it was insane, the level of screen navigation he had there. And so I would anticipate seeing some White on Curry as well in this series, just to trail him, stay on his hip, make him uncomfortable. I'm kind of toggling between what's better for Boston in that regard as well. Because you mentioned making Steph a shooter. Like, I wonder if, because of the size that they have in the front court, and I think they'll have a couple of help points if Steph is driving. If he's driving, I think you're going to see Robert Williams be able to help off of Kevon Looney if he gets that matchup. Or they may help off of an Andrew Wiggins and kind of force him to beat them with perimeter shots. I wonder if it might be a little better to force Steph downhill versus getting him going as a shooter. Like, am I insane for pondering that?
A little bit, but continue.
Okay. That's why I'm asking the question. Because I do worry about him igniting from deep and what that can open up for everyone else. And I think this Boston team, just from a size perspective, presents some issues that he didn't see in the Dallas series in particular with those drives. But I think Boston is more equipped to defend those.
Well, let's talk about it real quick before you go full Steph. How do you feel about Boston's two big lineup in this series? How do you feel about the Horford-Robert Williams duo?
I am a little worried about Rob in the series.
Why?
I'm worried about him in terms of the off-ball actions. That's kind of my big thing with him. And that's more so health-based, to be completely honest, because I just don't know where the knee is. And so I would worry about him having to track like just a lot of the split cuts and stuff like that, or the Looney action that you have talked about often.
Well, I mean, the interesting part with Williams is on paper, there's not really an ideal place to hide him. Mm-hmm. If you put him on Looney, that's fine, but that also means Looney's going to be involved in action, so he's going to have to defend. If you put him on Draymond, which they put Tatum on Draymond, I feel like in those matchups, which intrigued me. But if you put him on Draymond, sure, he can help, but unlike PJ Tucker, that's going to unlock some other things because Draymond's always hunting for the next play, and that's a shooter flying off. So it's not quite the PJ Tucker I can help off and then just kind of sag off as he tries to find someone. That's like a quick handoff or pitch to a shooter. Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, or Wiggins, or Poole, depending who's in the game. You have to deal with that. So how he kind of navigates those actions is going to be key to me. And I'm interested to see, can Golden State make Al Horford a pressure point? No team has been able to hit that button this playoff run. Not a one. And that's where I want to see, does Al come out in a drop or drop adjacent? You know, how does he come out? I look at Boston's coverages based on what Al does to me because he's the most versatile defender they have. So how he defends tells me what Boston's trying to do. And if he's going to come out, you know, switchy or droppy, it's going to tell me what they're trying to accomplish. And who they put him on is going to tell me what they're trying to accomplish. But that's where it gets interesting because Boston has a size and length that Golden State just has not seen so far this postseason.
Like the closest they got was the Memphis series. And because of foul trouble, Steven Adams was also out just with COVID. The foul trouble with Jaren, like the guards in Memphis just aren't the guards in Boston. And so it feels like there's just going to be less space for the Warriors to operate with. I guess on the Al Horford front, what coverage do you want to see him in?
Well, I think ideally, from a Boston perspective, you want to see him be able to do multiple things. Depending on who I'm guarding, I could be in a drop, especially depending on who's in the action with Golden State. And even tying it to the Horford deal, if I'm Boston, yeah, it's different than the Miami guards we just faced. But do we have to worry about anyone outside of Steph? Can we be comfortable in a drop versus Clay, Wiggins, Poole? Can we live with that? Can we work with the help we have and make them make shots? Like, that intrigues me. Do they feel that way? And it kind of ties in with the Horford thing. Can the bigs in this series hold up? You know, we've seen what Kevon Looney and Robert Williams did. Both had big impacts in their respective conference finals. Robert Williams is a roamer and a helper. Can he get there in this series? Can Kevon Looney be a switch big? Right? So we talk about Al, but what coverage does Kevon Looney start with? We saw him switch against Luka. That's great, but Jason Tatum provides a little bit of a different challenge in the sense that he may make quicker decisions. He may be able to attack and draw fouls. And now, if that happens, you're in a different scenario. So I feel like Looney holding up is going to be key. I feel like Robert Williams holding up is going to be key. It's tough. Like, in theory, Curry should force you to come to the level. But is Al Horford going to be able to play in between?
I got you. Actually, on the Robert Williams front, because I am just pulling the curtain back, recording on, what night is this? Monday? Recording on a Monday night.
Really? Jet setting. Limousine riding, jet flying.
Oh, man. Not
kiss stealing, wheeling, dealing.
Come on, dog. There's no flair here. You got it. You absolutely have it. All right. But recording on the Monday night, I am like halfway through like a series preview from Boston's perspective. And so I have this fresh in my mind right now. I was going to float out because you were talking about trying to find a space for Robert Williams to kind of be in that roamer role. How would you feel about him on Andrew Wiggins in this series?
I would get the idea, but at the same point, now he's going to have to navigate screens. I mean, I guess it could be a switch, but I'm intrigued. I will say I'm intrigued by that. I don't know if Boston goes there, but I'm intrigued. Treat him like they treated Jimmy Butler when Ime was calling him a big. I get it. I get it. I'm wrapping my head around it in real time. I guess the only issue would be if Wiggins is the ball handler, maybe it's a switch and now you're back in the same boat you would be in otherwise. But I'm listening. Continue.
Because that's kind of where I landed on if you're trying to get Robert Williams in that specific role. Because if you want to throw out like some nerd numbers out there, like Kevon Looney set like it's not why am I getting the face already?
Nerd numbers. What happened on that? What happened on that flight, my guy?
Hey man, just want to get into the nerdy stuff. Kevon Looney set about 30 off-ball picks per 100 possessions, and that's more than 4 times as much as Andrew Wiggins did. So I think that's just they use them differently off the ball, obviously. And so if you're worried about some of like the handback actions that they have for Kevon Looney and Steph Curry, like Golden State isn't going to go that way and use Wiggins as a handoff hub or as an off-ball screener that way. And so I think you have more leeway to place Rob Williams there as a help point And depending on the health of the knee, like he should be able to close out to Wiggins if the kick goes to him. And if your possessions are ending with Andrew Wiggins trying to attack Robert Williams, I think Boston plays the odds there and it's like, okay, well, if he gets the best of Rob, then we just transition to our smaller lineup anyway. And if Andrew Wiggins is finishing the possessions, that means Klay Thompson isn't, Steph Curry isn't. If Jordan Poole's on the floor, he isn't. And so if they're trying to get there, like I feel like that's, and it's not a perfect solution, but I feel like that's the closest they can get to him in that role. At least that's my thing. And it could be completely stupid, but that's where my mind was going.
Completely stupid is strong. But I feel like naturally they'll put him on Looney. And to credit your theory, do you see Al on Wiggins?
If I had to guess, like I think that's probably what they do. Because I think Tatum on Draymond makes sense for them to kind of make any Steph Draymond pick and roll a switch. And they want to take that off the table.
You put Tatum on Draymond, make that a switch. You put Smart on Curry, put Brown on Klay, and then whichever big you want to roam. Yeah, I think we've arrived there. Look at the teamwork thinking out loud.
This is what we do. This is the beauty of the podcast. You know, I throw out ideas. You tell me why they're bad, and then we get to the right answer. This is how it. This is how it works. This is why you are the professional, sir.
I'm just an amateur.
Yo, brother. Fake modesty has gone too far.
How do you feel about the lineups, by the way, in this series? Because we've seen them both have very strong small lineups on both ends of the floor. We've seen them have success while big. Who do you think it's more important to have success while big? Is it Looney staying strong, or is it Boston being able to play both their bigs at the same time?
I think it's going to be Boston being able to play both of their bigs at the same time. Because circling back to the Golden State run, particularly their second round series, Golden State being able to win the points in the paint and the rebounding battle is just not what, it certainly wasn't what I expected. Like, even if you had them beat Memphis, I thought it would be because Memphis lost them on off ball actions, or they turned the ball over and Golden State was able to get out in transition. But basically, they were going to bomb away from deep. And the Warriors were able to win that series because they manned the glass and manned the points in the paint. And they were able to kill Dallas on the glass, but they've been a bad rebounding team all year long. So that's less surprising. And I think for Boston, they're going to need that big lineup to hit because they, in theory, should have the interior advantage on both ends if they do. And so that's why it's important for Al Horford to find the coverage or multiple coverages. That's why it's important for Rob Williams in particular to find the comfort area on the defensive end. Because if he's able to hold up defensively, you can just stash him in the dunker spot on offense if you want to. And if Boston's able to create any sort of advantage, like that's just a lob. Kevon Looney has been very good defensively. He's not jumping with Rob Williams. And so he's going to be able to create in that way. Also, if you're using him as a roller, like we saw Golden State in some drop against Rob Will during the regular season series. I think he can be activated a little bit in this series if he's able to stay on the floor on the other end. So I would go with Boston. What would you say?
I wouldn't disagree with what you said there. I think the small lineup battle is interesting to me because Golden State hasn't had to lean on that lineup to a certain degree, just like Boston hasn't had to lean on their lineup to a certain degree. So for me, it's when did those lineups come out and who wins those minutes? Draymond at the 5 is a key for Golden State on both ends of the floor. We know what Boston's small lineup can do defensively as far as switching and mucking everything up and just making it real tough. Which one of those kind of imposes their will in this series? When do they feel like those lineups should come out. And are they going to shift how the other team feels? That's interesting to me. I think that, to your point, it gets interesting if Boston can't play two bigs at the same time, because they need that small lineup to be a plus, a bonus, and they need to have the defensive impact of Williams and Horford. We saw what that did in the last series. But I think, for me, devil's advocate, Golden State also needs Kevon Looney to be able to have, if not the same impact he had in the conference finals, definitely an impact. They can't go without him being the big, because where else do you go? If it's going to be straight Draymond on the 5, that makes it tough. So Looney has to be able to have an impact as far as not just defense, switching onto Tatum and Brown and containing and not fouling, but offensively, his roles have to continue to count. His rebounds have to continue to count. His screening is important. So both these teams are kind of in that same flux, and that's where it's like, I want to see what this looks like. What do they try and do? Because I don't know which team tries to go small first. I feel like it'll be Boston, just based on their run. Because Golden State, you gotta give Golden State credit. They have that lineup, and everyone wrote 15 think pieces about it, but they haven't really gone to it unless they have to.
You talked about it during the first round series with Denver, that people just used to get Jokic's takes off for whatever reason. But at any rate, but you saw and you pointed out during the back half of that series that, hey, Denver's kind of figuring out some stuff and figuring out how to at least hang with that lineup and then hurt it on the other end. And so if Denver was able to do that with their personnel, like, in theory, Boston has much better defensive personnel, just to be frank about it. And so maybe to your point, like, you do need the Looney minutes to really hit, so that can be their plus, versus, oh no, Looney can't hang, we got to go small. Now we're just feeding them pressure points if we haven't figured out the defense. And on that note, where are you at? Is Jordan Poole your X factor for Golden State in the series?
Klay Thompson's my X factor.
That tracks.
If he, really? If he is playing at that level and shooting at that level, the way they use him, it's going to be very tough. So Jordan Poole is not my X factor. Here's the thing. We talked about it. Dallas just gave Golden State the menu on how to defend against Boston. We know Boston's going to go to matchup hunting at some point in this series. Golden State just had to deal with that. So we know the show and recover is coming. For me, it's, can their guards do what Miami's guards couldn't do and poke at the drop and make Boston react? And that's where I think Klay is going to be important. Jordan Poole is going to be important. Andrew Wiggins is going to be important. Those guys have to be able to hit their times when they have those moments and make it count. How do you feel about the matchups? I know I'm opening up a can of worms here.
I can't believe you're asking me the matchup question. This is amazing.
Well, I mean, you always bring it up. So, I mean, I figure I might as well just ask now instead of just waiting for you to ask me, hey, Steve, what do you think about? I don't know. They're going to switch. Leave me alone. Draymond Green on Marcus Smart intrigued me. And I saw that in the first matchup that everyone told me didn't matter, which is fine. It allows Draymond to roam. And now we know how important Marcus Smart has been on ball for Boston. When he's when he's the ball handler and screens are coming for him, his kicks result in Boston's other guys getting touches. That's a switch now. If that lessens the impact, I am intrigued. What are your thoughts matchup-wise?
I actually like that look for Golden State because of the reasons you stated. Being able to turn some of those pick and rolls into switches, I think, can neutralize Boston. And again, like, Miami lost the series, but they were able to get Boston in the mud sometimes. It wasn't all just unforced turnovers. Like, they were able to flatten them out some too. And so if Draymond can do that, as the point that you've made throughout this postseason run, if Smart's getting dribble penetration for you, he's now kicking to the Jays, and they're able to get catch and shoot opportunities or attack from there. And if you're taking that off the table, that's a way to bring Boston into the mud, unless they can create some stuff elsewhere. I am intrigued with, I guess that's going to be a game within the game I want to watch, because if you do get Draymond on Smart, then he's absolutely going to want to roam. But like Marcus Smart is a good screener, and he is good at slipping against switches. And so I wonder if he's able to shake free enough on those slips to kind of poke at that a little bit. It's going to be tough because it's Draymond. One, he knows what to do. Two, he can get into those physical switches as well, where he can get under you and kind of cut off that roll for you. But if Marcus Smart can generate some stuff there, then it gets a little bit more interesting in the half court. If not Smart, where else would you put Dre, I guess would be my question.
Well, you could always put him on Tatum or Brown, try and cut the water off. And we look at the Dallas series, they just put him on Brunson and said, hey, whatever he does is going to be tough. So, if they went out and said, hey, you guard Jaylen Brown, try and take him off the table early, I wouldn't be surprised by that move. The dribble penetration battle is going to be interesting.
We're on the same page.
It's no fun.
Sorry.
Turn your page, sir. But the dribble penetration is going to be fun because the Warriors have secretly had a lot of success scoring in the paint on this run. And their ability to contain the drive against Dallas was huge. And they're going to have to find a way to get in the paint in this series. And Boston's coming off a series where they cut off the paint. And the size and length gets interesting. So can they get the same drives? And back to Boston, like they're coming off a series where that dribble penetration was really important. Everyone wants to talk about the half-court execution or what sets they're running or what they're trying to do. They tried to run something. Once it stopped, they put their head down and drove and played out of it. And we've seen throughout the playoffs, Golden State kind of go back and forth with how they deal with that. Against Denver, I think it took them off guard a little bit. Against Memphis, we saw against Ja, there was a lot of space. Other guys had room to operate once Ja went down. Against Dallas, they were a whole different team. They were locked in on containing the drive. They were showing early help. They were keeping it all in front. Can they have that same mindset against Boston? Because quiet as kept, that Boston-Miami series came down to Boston knowing if we just put our head down and take 3 dribbles, Miami's going to bring all the help, and we can at least get a kick out of that and play out of that. Is Golden State going to hit the nuance and hit the right notes there, or is it going to be a layup fest?
I got you. I guess just circle back to the earlier question. This is kind of where I went. Jordan Poole's going to be important because, like, on the other end of the floor, like, I think if Boston does go into mismatch hunting mode, like, I think he's going to be the guy for them. And so wondering how he's going to hold up is going to be key. But to your point, the drives are going to be so important. And he and Steph, or I guess aside from Steph, like, he is the guy that can get it off the bounce and really attack and get downhill, get 2 feet in the paint, and then make a play from there. And so if Boston is able to contain him as well, you're turning Golden State into a bunch of jump shooters, which they can still win that way. You have Steph, you have Poole, you have Clay. But that's a tough diet to live on against a defense like this. If they're able to stay out of the paint, that's more rebounds, that's more transition opportunities. You don't have to worry about some of the half-court questions for Boston if they're not in the half court. So I don't know. I'm just
call Golden State a jump shooting team. Is Charles Barkley your ally?
Oh, brother, no. I am saying that Boston will attempt to do that to Golden State. They want to cut off those drives, which answers my earlier question. Like, because I was wondering, do you force step downhill and try to contain from there? But now I'm just like, okay, probably not. Let's see if you can make him. It sounds wild to say make Steph beat you with pull-ups because of course he can do that. But containing the dribble penetration, not making easier kicking, easier catch and shoot opportunities pop up would make more sense.
How do you feel about Boston switching against Golden State? Do you feel like Golden State can operate offensively in the half court? Boston has the personnel, they have the mindset to bog them down. Against in the Dallas series, Golden State didn't really cooperate for the majority of it as far as getting away from the off-ball stuff. We saw Boston take it off the board against Miami. How do you feel about that?
Uh, I feel pretty solid about the switching. On that front, this is where I go to the other two guard. I'm a little worried about Jaylen Brown in this specific context. Very, very, very good on-ball defender. Very strong. You're not really moving him if you try to get your shoulder into his chest. Very quick laterally. Asking him to navigate 2 or 3 screening actions gets a little iffy for him. And there were enough possessions that popped up during the regular season series that didn't matter because of personnel. But there were enough plays in that to where it's like, it's interesting that Steph is calling for a screen to get Jaylen Brown switched onto him before he's flying off of that Kevon Looney screen in their pet action. It's interesting he's making him do that. It's interesting that they're screening away on the weak side before doing something, knowing that Jaylen has to be the helper if it calls for it. And so on that front, I want to see how locked in he's going to be off the ball. Because in that Miami series, Derek White was just able to turn off Max Strus's water. Jaylen didn't really have to worry about that. And there were still some blips throughout that series from him off ball. Golden State is going to present an entirely different story. I think we were talking about matchups a little bit earlier in the pod. Like he's probably going to get the Klay Thompson assignment. That could be problematic if he's not locked in. It may be easy for him to switch the things in front of him, but if it's a switch and now Steph's turning around, setting the back screen on him, and now you have to communicate that, like the communication for Boston in general is just going to be wildly important because they do have the personnel to switch all this stuff and stay attached. But you're one late point switch away from Golden State waltzing to the rim. And that's a lot with them coming off of a 7-game series. It's going to be, I'll call it early. Like I think Golden State wins game 1.
Wow, a bold prediction from Nekias Duncan, folks. Do they win game 2?
I'm not going to do the full game by game thing, but I think they get game 1. Like I just think Golden State's offense and what they're able to do. And again, Boston is coming off of this 7-game series. Golden State's been waiting for a little bit. I just think it's going to take them a little bit of time to get settled in.
Well, I mean, it's a different challenge, but at the same time, I feel like that's one of the things in my head before we start this. Can Boston have the switches, have the activity off ball to bring Golden State closer to the mud and take some of that stuff off the table? Get them deeper in the clock, get them to doing less things movement-wise. Because we've seen the stretches, even the Dallas series, where they kind of just stop doing what they're supposed to do execution-wise and what the trouble that causes. And Boston has the personnel and the mindset to get that to happen. So if they can be physical and bring that game within the margins there, it gets interesting. Like, that's where I'm intrigued. Because if Boston can do that, now we're talking about a different series. You know, I think we're talking about a lot of it. And don't get me wrong, Golden State is a different challenge offensively. But if Boston can take that away, it's similar to what they faced. And yeah, you have Steph Curry in pick and roll, but who else is going to get a bucket? If they're relying just on pick and roll and penetration, it's kind of a win for Boston. So that's the battle for me. Golden State has to take care of the ball and hit the blend offensively. to where the ball is moving, the ball is popping, they're forcing rotation. Now we hit you with pick and roll. Now we hit you with off ball. We're just kind of moving you around, being a moving target. If I'm Boston, let's get you in the mud. Let's be physical. Let's be active. Let's take your off ball stuff off. Slow your tempo down. Figure it out on the other end. That's been Boston's formula. Our defense gives us just enough, and offensively, we find a way to attack your points on the other end. It's not pretty. Their offense is not pretty. No disrespect. But hey, we're going to figure out whatever your pressure point is. We're going to hit it and create out of that. And that's a unique point. That's a unique deal. We haven't had a lot of playoff teams that just find the weakness and attack that. Usually they bring the weakness, their star power exploits the weakness.
Yeah.
Boston just kind of finds it. And then once they find it, well, that's what we're going to do whenever we're stuck. And you think it doesn't matter until the game's close and it's the fourth quarter. And now, the thing you couldn't do, we're picking on now. So it's going to be fun, man.
It's going to be a lot of fun. I have a couple more Boston-related questions. I think I'll be done.
No!
Never mind. Thank you for listening to this episode of Oh, Jesus. I'll be quick, I promise. On the Tatum front, because I feel like we haven't talked a ton about him offensively. Were you intrigued by him seeing some two to the ball during the regular season series? And do you think that continues?
In pick and roll or just in general?
Yeah, in pick and roll.
As far as the bigs or their guards?
The bigs.
I was intrigued. I was intrigued by them putting two on the ball. I think that was the first clip I threw on the old Twitter. Two on the ball with Tatum. That's going to be interesting to see how they treat him. Is it going to be a switch? Is it going to be a drop? Is it going to be two on the ball? I think I know what they're going to do with the guard. If they try and attack Curry, Poole, I think we know it's going to be show and recover. We've seen that for a whole series. Mm-hmm. With Looney, do they just carry over the Dallas game plan and just switch and play out of that? I think I would anticipate they go with that right out the jump. I don't know if they'll go two on the ball that much. Just thinking about the lineups, I just don't know that they'll throw that out there in this scenario. Because as good of a coverage as it is, it opens up the threat of Tatum being a scorer and a playmaker. Because he can go get buckets. And then if you're putting two on the ball, they know they can just run him in pick and roll and open something up. And that's a dangerous combination for Boston. So I anticipate we see Looney switching to start after the work he did against Luka, and they may adjust from that. But I don't think we'll see straight traps two on the ball to start. I've been wrong before, though. What do I know? I'm just a guy who knows nothing about basketball.
Not sure who said that, but they were.
Oh, I can give you the list. Let's.
We'll save that for the Patreon content. Anyway, last Boston thing, just on the bench front, because you did mention his name a little bit earlier. What kind of role does Peyton Pritchard play in this series, if at all?
A bucket getter. He's got to be a scorer. Mm-hmm. I think the shift in that Miami series was, hey, we need to win. So we need a guard. So we're going to put those lineups out there that are going to guard. Now, they may get to that in this series, but I don't think it's going to start that way. I think Pritchard's going to get the opportunity to see if he can stay on the court in this series. And with the lineups they face, he may have a better chance. Because while he probably will be hunted, who's he going to be hunted by? That's going to be the interesting point. Like, is it going to be Clay and Wiggins post-ups? Because if that happens, we're talking a different story. Like, if they play him off the court, that gets interesting. But I don't know that Pritchard's going to be a liability right from the jump, to me. I think he's going to have the opportunity to prove himself. They need his offense overall in this series, especially if Golden State has a humming. So they're going to need him to play. For me, I just thought that Miami series took a shift where they knew Jimmy's going to come at you. We can't afford to give them that. Let's take you off the court. Now, Golden State could find something like that, but until they do, I don't think he's going to be just sitting on the bench.
Okay. I would say, at least looking at some like the hybrid second units, like maybe that is the Jordan Poole thing that he tries to pick at. And I think to your point, like I think he'll have more of a natural hiding place with if Moses Moody is still in the lineup. I think that would be kind of a hiding place for him.
Moses.
That's the one. So I'm with you on that front. Actually, one more thing. I have a Golden State question for you. How much zone do you think they throw out at Boston? Because Miami tried, and it was mostly fine after the first game they saw it.
That's the funny part. I felt like Miami. I thought Miami would try it more than they did, to be honest with you. I think Golden State, their ability to have multiple coverages is going to be a key. And if they can just throw multiple things at Boston, that's something Boston hasn't quite seen. Like they've seen different game plans and they've conquered different game plans. And I don't know how they handle the blend once they get in the rhythm. Ideally, in the Miami series, you would have thought the zone would have been the breaker. Golden State zone helps them because, hey, we take you out of matchup hunting. We take you out of what you're trying to attack offensively. We know you want to matchup hunt in the half court. We bog you down. Now we go on the other end. So I think we'll see a good mix of zone. How Boston handles that is going to be interesting, but I think we see a good mix.
All right. Well, I am good. Did you have any more thoughts to add on the series? Any stray notes, scheme things, questions that you want?
Wiggins has to show up. I think this is a big Wiggins series. It's a big Klay Thompson series. They need their wings and guards to show up in a big way. They need them to make Boston pay on that end. For Boston, it's going to take a collective effort. Their defense has to be locked in. They've got to bring Golden State into the mud, force turnovers, be active, contest shots, and figure out enough stuff in the half court to make it work. If they can't, it gets interesting. But I think it's going to be a fun series. It's going to be some fun times. We're going to have some fun talks. There's no Chris Middleton. There's no Chris Paul. We can really enjoy basketball this year.
Wow. What a shot. That's amazing. We can really enjoy basketball this year? What does that mean?
On the podcast.
On the you wait a minute. I had plenty of fun. What do you mean?
We was the key word.
Yeah, me, myself, and I. What do you mean? We
Look here, Nekias. Just take us home, all right?
Nekias, that's amazing. What a shot. Actually, no. Who's your pick? Who do you have?
Who do I have?
Yeah, who do you have?
Golden State in 7.
Ah, I see. I am going to take Boston in 6. There we go.
Did you get some DMs or?
No, I didn't. I just I'm sure I will now, but no, I did not. I do think Boston's going to be able to sort through enough defensively. Like, I do think they're going to be able to bother Golden State's half court a little bit. And they'll have some matchups to pick at on the other end. And even in the event that they can't find something for Rob Williams, they're putting Grant Williams in his place. And we've seen, I'm not going to make it a whole nother point, but I want to see what coverage Grant Williams is in too if he's playing alongside Al Horford. Because they threw in some drop with him against Miami. I don't know if you do that against Golden State, unless it's like a Wiggins pick and roll. You just want to keep him, make him a jump shooter. But I think I believe in Boston's defense. I think
I hear you. It's going to be a battle. I think Boston defense brings a lot to the table. I'm going to upgrade mine to Warriors in 6.
All right.
If Golden State can do the things they're supposed to do offensively with the movement, with their blend, and be active enough defensively, it's going to be tough for Boston to match it. It's a different challenge. This is a team that can score the basketball, and they've been able to use their defense to give them a wider margin of error. If Golden State can pick at that and poke at that, that's going to kind of shut that down a little bit. So, in theory, if Golden State can hit the right notes, I think they win this series. Now, if Boston can bring them in the mud, there's no doubt they have a big chance to win this series. Don't take this prediction as me throwing them over the top rope.
Mm-hmm.
If Boston can get this in the mud, no surprise they win this series. But I'm gonna lean on Golden State's experience, their hunger, their mission. They're on their way to try and get another one. I don't know if they're gonna tap out coming this close. So
I feel you. I think that's kind of like as someone who doesn't have a vested interest in either one of these teams, like I think that's the fun of it. Like it's gonna feel kind of storybook no matter who wins it. Golden State after this run, like again, 6 finals in 8 years, they had the big gap, and now they're back here. If Steph gets another one, if they're able to win, Clay gets another ring after the injury stuff he went through. Like it's gonna be a great story. And for this Boston team, the Jays going through, should they be broken up? Should it be traded? Yada yada yada. All the conference finals losses that they felt with, they finally break through this year. Ime Udoka in year 1, the stuff that was talked about him early in the season for Boston to turn into the team they've turned into in 2022. Like it's going to be a great story, whoever wins it. And I'm with you. Like me picking Boston does not mean I think Golden State is bad or anything like that. But I'm rolling with Boston in this one. I like the toughness. I like the defensive versatility, the size that they have. I think they'll bring Golden State in the mud enough.
I don't blame you. I understand. He's trying to get another driver to get you some pizza, huh?
Oh, brother. That's my cue. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Dunker Spot. If you if you have not already, please subscribe to us. We are on Apple, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, Podbean, wherever you get your podcasts, you can find us. You can find me on Twitter at Nekias NBA. You can find Steve on Twitter at SteveJones20. And with that, we will catch y'all after game 1.
Wait, what?